we are continuing to work through our theme for this fall, these fall weeks of spending 40 days in the Word. And we have been focusing on Sunday morning on some of the things that are important for us to understand about God's Word, why God's Word is important to us, how God's Word benefits us, how God's Word grows us in the things of Jesus. We have small groups meeting during the week. There are 30 of you who are participating in small groups. And so that's a lesson. And anyone who wanted to or would like to can participate at least, certainly in Sunday morning, but during the day, there are daily devotions that are done by video that you can just go online and access. And so those are at 40ditw.com. That's 40, the number 40, ditw.com. And it's right there. It just says daily devotionals. You click on it, and it takes you right to those videos. And so you can participate, even if you're not in a small group weekly, you can participate daily and share in that time together. So this is kind of our emphasis, just emphasizing the Word and its importance for us. And I think it's great that we're taking this journey together. One of the things that we're hopefully going to get out of this, and it isn't on the screen this morning on this particular graphic, but the theme is for us to learn to love the Word, to learn the Word, and then to ultimately live the Word. When we come to love the Word, our desire is going to be to learn it. When we learn the Word, we can't just leave it there. We need to take what we have learned and then put that into practice. James 1 talks about the person who is the forgetful hearer, and not the doer. He's the person who, if you would, we talked about last week, the person who what? He takes a glance. He takes a glance. He just looks quickly at the Word and what the Word brings to the table for him. He doesn't take the time to gaze at it and to really allow it to speak to their hearts. So I hope you've been keeping up in the different ways that you have and are able to participate in our time together. Last week, foundation, the idea of how do I build my life on the Word. This week, we're going to take another step, and we're going to talk about inspiration and why we can trust the Bible. Why is the Bible trustworthy to us? And I want to start by kind of giving you some illustration with regard to some of the things that I've just heard recently that deal with the issue of being able to trust Scripture. There has been really, over the last number of years, what I would call an explosion of discoveries with regard to fragments of Scripture, particularly in the Middle East, in different communities. And the discoveries of these fragments of papyrus, of what was written on, if you would, in ancient times, many of them purport to reveal things about Jesus and the people who spent time with Jesus that, if you would, we didn't previously know. It was interesting. I was driving back from doing some visiting and just seeing some people yesterday, and I was listening to a call-in kind of a question and answer Bible guy kind of show. And I hadn't heard this guy before, and I really didn't take notice of who this person was or what the show was. But as I listened, as I traveled down the wilds of Route 2 and our area, it was interesting to me that of the questions that I happened to catch while I was listening, it was interesting to me that the two of them had to deal with the idea of things that had been found recently. And one of the guys, I don't remember the first one, but one of the guys who called and asked a question, he asked a question with regard to the writings or the gospel of Nicodemus. Nicodemus, as you know, is the gentleman, is the religious leader who visited Jesus in the night, under cover of night, in John chapter 3. And he came and he asked Jesus about his ministry, and so here are these, if you would, fragments or these writings, and what about them? What do we do with these things? Are they Scripture? Are they real? Well, they're certainly real, but whether they're Scripture or not, that's a whole other story. So it was interesting that there's a lot of questions that have developed with regard to these types of writings. A Catholic scholar named Raymond Brown, he wrote 3 decades ago in a book, this quote: "It's an interesting insight into human nature that the more fantastic the scenario, the more sensational is the promotion it receives, and the more intense the faddish interest it attracts. Do you get that? It's an embarrassing insight into human nature the more fantastic the scenario that's presented. The more sensational then is the promotion it receives, and the more intense the faddish interest it attracts. Gospel of Nicodemus. Let me show you this. This is a little bit more close to home. You're probably not going to know who this lady is, but she's not far from here. In fact, she's at Harvard University. What she's holding there, her name is Karen King. She's a Harvard professor. She is holding a fragment, the only fragment is the one she's holding, of what has come to be known as the Gospel of Jesus' Wife. The Gospel of Jesus' Wife. She's holding a Coptic or a Catholic Egyptian text from the group, a Gnostic group. They believed that matter was bad, the spirit was good. And this particular group had broken away from Christianity, if you would, traditional Christianity, or Christianity as we would understand it, and they chose to form their own little group. And so they had rejected the apostles' witness and the teaching of the disciples, and so she is purporting that Jesus had a wife, and bases it on this particular fragment. Now, if you know your scriptures, and if you've spent any time in the scriptures, you're going to know that the scriptures that we have do not present that Jesus had a wife. That we don't find that in there. Early church historians and early church fathers like Clement and Tertullian in the 2nd centuries had said that Jesus didn't have a wife. And the problem is, if you would, as she presents it, is just a fragment. There's no more, and there's nowhere else that this is said. If you look at this particular issue, Barry Pierce is teaching a class on fundamentals of the faith, which is kind of a little survey of doctrine. None of our key doctrines rise or fall on the issue of whether Jesus was or was not married. I mean, it's interesting to consider. But none of the key doctrines rise or fall on that issue. And quite honestly, there's none of the early church people ever thought it an issue to include it anywhere. And so for centuries, it was never mentioned, but now it's an issue. One of the things that I thought about when I kind of tried to process this and to talk about the issue of whether we can trust Scripture is this. Well, quite honestly, doesn't Jesus already have a bride? It's you and me. You know, and so for me, to consider this and to make this an issue, it's kind of like, what? Albert Mulder, who's a Southern Baptist theologian, says this about what this professor put out there. He calls it sensationalism, and he says it masquerades as scholarship. And so, through the centuries, it's appropriate to ask, can we trust Scripture? With all of the new things that get presented, and much more, as it seems, as we move forward, can we rely on the Bible that we have? Can we consider it to be trustworthy? How has it managed and worked through the challenges of the centuries so that we can say that what we have today is truly worthy of being followed? So, inspiration is really an important issue. It's something that we really ought to look at as we consider God's Word. And so today, in terms of our transforming truth, I want to just give it to you up front, and then we'll work backwards from it. But it's very simply this, and you can put this in if you're using the message guide. You can follow along that way. But it's inspiration is the work of God that ensures the Bible is trustworthy and transformational. Inspiration is the work of God that ensures that what we have, the Scriptures, are trustworthy and transformational. Throughout the centuries, individuals, through a process that is called canonization, and I don't want to talk about that, but really, how did we end up with Scripture? If you want to just make 2 notes on the side of your little message guide there, how did we end up with the Scripture? Just 2 very simple thoughts. The first is an ancient process, and that process is called canonization. It is the process and the wherewithal that those early church individuals sorted out what was fiction and what was fact, what was from God and what was just merely the record of an individual. What was divinely inspired, as we're going to see, 2 Timothy chapter 3, or what was just someone's recording of, if you would, their diary. So there's an ancient process, but there's also what we're going to call almighty providence. Almighty providence. That while God spoke and used us, we know that he superintended it all through providence and through control to make sure that what we have today truly is his word and his mind and his desire for us. So it's transformational, it's trustworthy, and we want to look at that today. So let me invite you to turn in your Bibles, use your message guide if you'd like, or you can follow along on the screen. 2 Timothy chapter 3, page 1057 if you want to follow along using a Pew Bible. And we're going to begin looking at just these verses here in verse 16. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16. And this is what Paul relays to Timothy. He says, all scripture given by inspiration of God is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, thoroughly equipped for every good work. And then, back in the Psalms, Psalm 119, it says this, all of your commandments are faithful. In other words, they're trustworthy. So I can trust the Bible because of this inspiration, this working of God in the hearts and in the minds and through the very pens of these individuals, so that what has been provided to me in the Word is trustworthy, and because it is from God, it is also transformative. It's transformative. So this should inspire me. I should be excited, if you would, about inspiration. Are you inspired by inspiration? That God wanted us to understand his mind, his heart, and wanted to make sure that we could know with surety what his desires were for us. So what can we walk away with here with regard to inspiration? The first thing is this, is that we can be sure that it's correct. We can be sure that the word is correct. And one of the things that I want to point out here is that we can be sure because God has worked in this, that it's not just doctrinally correct, but it's also trustworthy in every other area that we might want to look to it for. And why is that? Why can we say that the Bible is trustworthy in all of these different ways, in all of these different areas? And very simply, it's because God doesn't lie. God's not lying. In the scriptures we see this, Hebrews 6, that by two immutable things in which it is impossible for God to what? To lie. Whatever you get from God is going to be the truth. It might hurt, it might be painful, perhaps it'll bring you joy and it'll bring you a smile, but whatever you get from God, it's going to be the truth. And so if this truly is his word and he's worked through it and he has provided through process and providence that we would have a recording of his mind, you can know that this is true. That this is true. You may not like it, but it's true. I have to be honest with you, there's times I read stuff here and I don't like it. It rubs me the wrong way. It's not the way I'm thinking right now. But it's true. And it's his heart, his mind for us. And so, one of the things that we can talk about is the correctness, the truth, the reliability of Scripture. And so, what are some areas we see that beyond just doctrine? Well, the first is this. There's a historical accuracy that we find in Scripture. And what are some tests of good history? Let me give you a couple of them. Well, first, most of the Bible is from eyewitness accounts. It isn't secondhand news. It's from people who actually saw what happened and they recorded those things. People were there, and when they know the when, they know the what. They wrote about what happened. They wrote about these experiences. It's eyewitness accounts. Archaeology confirms the scripture eventually. Eventually. There are some things, and there have been times when people say, no, that's not true, this place really doesn't exist, or no, this is not right, the Bible's wrong in this. One of those issues was the issue of the Hittites. We see in Scripture, and we read about the Hittites in Scripture, but they were never found, or there was never anyone who recorded where their city was or what was going on there. And so one of the things that happened was, after many people had claimed Scripture was wrong, Hugo Winkler, an archaeologist, found some tablets. And when they translated the tablets, they found that it said 10,000 at capital of Hittites. And it proved the accuracy of Scripture with regard to archaeology, with regard to these things, that the places can be found, the people can be accounted for. Acts is all about historical accuracy and making sure that we understand those things. What else about historical accuracy? The Scriptures are also copied with extreme care. They were first written, and now after time, they were written by hand. Written by hand. That they were transferred and they were copied by hand. If you would, there were human Xerox machines who were creating the copies of the Scriptures. There were human duplicators that were doing this, letter by letter, not word for word. And so it went down even to the letters. How many of you have ever had an issue with your phone where you tried to send a message and all of a sudden you found you send all these kinds of words and you're like, what in the world did I just say? Predictive. There was no prediction in this. It was manually, letter by letter, columns, counted, so that they knew exactly how many letters, how many columns, how many words were in each book of the Bible that they were copying. And when they found that it had gotten off, their habit was, and their way, they had to destroy it. Because they did not want the error to creep into the copies of the Scriptures that they had. And so the Scriptures, extreme care went into those things. Letter by letter, counting forward, counting backward. We see also scientific accuracy. Now, let's just be honest, Scripture was never given to be a science book. But where it does speak to science, it does speak accurately. It does speak accurately. It doesn't use scientific languages, but it never gives bad science. What's some things here? It's always ahead of science. Do you realize that? Scripture's always ahead of science. You ought to take comfort in that. We always tend to play from, if you would, from catch-up in terms of science, that we have to prove it. No, Scripture is always ahead of science. Always ahead of science. Johannes Kepler, the astronomer, he said this. He says, science is thinking God's thoughts after him. Science is thinking God's thoughts after him. If you would, science is trying to catch up to Scripture. Over in the Psalms, it says this, Psalm 148. Let them praise the name of the Lord, for he commanded and they were created. He also established them forever and ever. He made a decree which shall not pass away. It's always ahead of science. Second, let me suggest this, that science constantly changes. So much is so quickly obsolete. So much is so quickly obsolete. One of the things that I think is interesting, and I heard this some years ago, and I forget exactly where I heard it, but it stuck with me. And it was that science progresses so fast, and this really is kind of, if you will, a little side road to what we're talking about this morning. But science progresses so fast, it makes it very hard for us to process how we should deal with those advances from a moral perspective. Do you understand what I'm saying? That the questions about what we should do are coming faster than our ability to decide what to do. That we've been able to take such great strides in terms of our ability to do this or scientific that, to our ability to do medical things. That all of a sudden, what, if you would, was much simpler has now become a much harder question. And our ability to ethically and morally process things has not kept track with the science that's happening around us. But science is always, if you would, behind the Scriptures. For instance, was in Paris some years ago and was able to visit the Louvre. And there's a library there, and inside the library there are more than 3.5 miles of old science books. Almost all of them now obsolete. In 1861, the French Academy of Science wrote a book, and this was in the days of Enlightenment, And it was called this, 51 Incontrovertible Scientific Facts That Prove the Bible is Wrong. That book, now obsolete. All of them proven wrong now by science. It's interesting, if you would, one proof that God made this book and not man is what the Bible doesn't say. What was the predominant thought with regard to our world centuries ago? That our world, if you would, was flat. But you never see the scriptures present the world as flat. Because why? Scriptures are ahead of the game. They're ahead of the game. You never see it say that. The earth was flat. 2,600 years ago, this is what Isaiah said. He says this, he says, "It is he who sits above the what? The circle of the earth. And its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in." He talks about the circle of the earth. And here we were talking about it being flat. In those days, the earth had to be supported. Certainly, the earth couldn't stand for itself. The Greeks thought Atlas held up the earth. The Hindus feel a giant elephant holds it up on their backs, and they stand on the top of a giant turtle. And there's a giant serpent that swims in the sea. The Egyptians, they held that there were 5 pillars. And, here's Moses. Moses is schooled in the teachings and the wisdom of the Egyptians, yet none of this is spoken of in the scriptures. But the scripture says this: He stretches out the earth over empty space. He hangs the earth on nothing. He hangs the earth on nothing. That the stars couldn't be counted, and I'm not going to say anything here, except that for centuries and centuries they have tried to count the stars. And in fact, people like Ptolemy and others actually felt that they had counted the stars. But what does Scripture say? "As the host of heaven cannot be numbered, nor the sand of the sea measured, so I will multiply the descendants of David, my servant, and the Levites who minister to me." I can't count them. And yet we try. Here's a weird one. A number of you are medical people in here, and so I grabbed onto this because I thought this was interesting. So if you're a medical person here, okay, time to wake up. It used to be the prevailing thought that too much blood made you sick. You ever heard that? The thought was that you had to bleed people in order for them to get well. Hippocrates, on from 2,000 years of science, taught what is called humoralism. That all illness and temperament issues were caused by 4 bodily fluids. That was your bile, there was yellow and black, there was blood, and then there was phlegm. And from these 4 bodily fluids, all of your issues came. But you don't find that in the Bible. Science didn't know until 1628 that the blood actually circulates. William Harvey discovered that. A Greek named Galen actually thought that we had a heart in order to give us heat. He didn't realize that what it was there for was to pump blood and move it around. Our first president, historians tell us, Washington got sick. And in the wisdom of the day, he did what? He listened. Washington ultimately died, historians feel, because they basically bled him to death in the midst of his illness. Today, what do? We give people blood. We give them transfusions. Leviticus chapter 17, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul." So for science, Scripture is ahead of the game. We also see not only history, but we see science, but we see prophetic accuracy. The Bible predicts thousands of events that have happened just as God said. 300 alone, more than with regard to the Messiah, where and how he would be born, dying, going to the cross. In 2 Peter, it says this in chapter 1, "For prophecy never came by will of man, but holy men of God spoke from God as they were moved by the Spirit." Matthew 26, "But all this this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Prophetic accuracy. So we have this scripture, it's trustworthy, it's transformative. Why? Because it's correct. It's not only correct about God and the things that relate to God, but it's correct about things like history and science and things about, and prophecy, the things that it tells us that will happen, the actual happen. It's inspired. Let me suggest, secondly, though, that it's cohesive. Not only is it correct, but it's cohesive, that there is one unified message. The Bible is one book. If you haven't already, if you wanted to take a look in the very front page. It's one book made up of 66, written by over 40 different authors over a period of about 1,600 years. Written in dozens of countries in 3 different continents, 3 different languages, Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, people from all different walks of life, farmers and kings and soldiers and shepherds and princes and priests, all of them coming together, used of God to present his mind and his heart in an accurate way. You couldn't get a more diverse group to present the word, and yet it's cohesive. If I were to hand out 66 different pieces of paper to you this morning, and 66 pairs of scissors, and ask you to kind of turn from the group and to cut a shape into that paper, and then is there any way in the world that you would all cut the same shape? Or that those shapes would in any way, shape, or form all fit together in some kind of a cohesive way? No. The odds, if you would be astronomical. But yet when we look at the writing of Scripture, we see that the writings of Scripture are cohesive and they fit together to present a single story of the progress of redemption, of God's work to bring man back to himself from a fallen state. It's amazing. And so this cohesion is there. Luke 24, it says, "In the beginning of Moses and all the prophets, he expounded to them all the scriptures and the things concerning himself." The theme is God's plan for redemption. The star of the story is Jesus. And he's in it from the beginning to the very end. John chapter 5, "You search the scriptures, for in them you think that you have eternal life, and these are they which testify of me." It speaks of Jesus. It's correct, it's cohesive, it's also certified. It has a seal of approval. Jesus himself confirmed the reliability of the scriptures in Matthew 5. "Assuredly, I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled." Now, it's interesting. I used this verse and I used that phrase a couple of weeks ago. And somebody asked me, what is a jot and what is a tittle? What are those things? Well, actually, those are words that are used to describe, first, individual letters, and second, strokes. There's not a letter or any stroke of the scripture that will pass away. Not a one. As Jesus shares here, not a one. Until the law is fulfilled. And so he certifies these things. Let me suggest fourth, that not only does Jesus certify it, not only is it correct, not only is it cohesive, but it's also the champion. There is no other book that is the champion over Scripture. It has an enduring quality. It is still the best-selling, most read book. It is the source of the greatest of art, the most amazing music, if you want to check it out next week, and architecture. Voltaire, who was a philosopher in his day, he prophesied that Scripture would disappear and be of no value in 100 years. Within 100 years, he said, quote, "The Bible will be forgotten." His home today is the headquarters for the French Bible Society. Who's the champion? Who's the champion? 1 Peter chapter chapter 1, it says this, because all flesh is as grass, all the glory of man is the flower of the grass withers, its flower falls away, but the word of the Lord, it endures forever. Scripture's champion. And then finally, let me suggest this. It changes lives. It changes lives. There is no other book in the world that changes lives like the Bible. I've read some good books. I've read some books at the end of which I've been in tears. You ever read a book like that? Mitch Albom wrote a book a number of years ago called Tuesdays with Morrie. I read that book, and at the end, I was broken. I was like, there's no way in the world this book could be done. How in the world can this book be done? How can the conversation between this man and this dying man, how can this be done? There must be more to be said. And I was like beside myself. As wonderful as that book was, it is nothing compared to what this book is. This book is not simply trustworthy, but it's transformational. If you spend time in this book, it will change your life. It holds the keys to the things that will take your life from where it is to where God desires for it to be. But it only happens when we do what? When we learn to love it, when we learn it, and then when we begin to live it out on a daily basis. It changes lives. It's powerful in that way. Over in John chapter 8, Jesus spoke about the power of the word to change lives. He said this, Jesus said to the Jews who believed him, if you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed. You shall know the truth, and it will make you free. It will change your life. It will change your life. The big question, though, is, I guess, here in this particular spot, is does this book have authority in your life? Is it the undisputed authority for your life? God has given us an inspired word that it should inspire us. He has given us a word that through ancient process and through almighty providence and power gives us a trustworthy and transformative word for our lives. And so my question for you this morning is what does this mean to you? What have you allowed? Have you allowed it to do in your life, and are you allowing it to do in your life what it's designed to do? To transform you, to grow you, to take you from bondage or from your stuckness in some area of your life, and to give you freedom. What kind of authority does this book have for you today? The word's transformative. It changes us. We see this over in Romans 12. Do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Transformed by the renewing of your mind by what? Putting this in. Moving out and replacing it with this. Allowing the word of Christ to dwell in you richly. Makes a huge difference. And so let me encourage you with inspiration. And may you, as a follower of Jesus today, be inspired to be in the Word more. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. It's the most important, the most life-changing of all books. It's God's Word for us. Father, thank you for this morning. And Lord, we thank you for giving us this word. Lord, in a world where people search and look and try to find their way through circumstance and challenge, we thank you that you have provided for us a reliable and trustworthy word for our lives. And so for each of us today, we pray and we ask that you would help us to consider how are we relating to this book, and how are we relating to what this book shows us and teaches us. shown us. And so perhaps today there's someone here for the first time who has just never engaged with Scripture. Lord, I pray that today would be that first step. And for those of us who have walked for a while in the Word, God, help us not to grow bored or to see it as something that's just dull. And it's amazing, but that's so easy to have happen. Lord, help us to be excited about your Word, to hide it in our